Welcome to my presentation about the BRICS group and how they, as emerging powers, affect the multipolar world of today. So, first, a few words about me. I'm Lucas. I'm a political science and economics major, and I'm currently an exchange student from Germany here at the Bloomsburg University. I decided to talk about the BRICS group as the main focus of the Western media is also on Western organizations like the EU or the G7, and so the BRICS group received less attention in the last years, but it has many powerful members and increased its power in the last years. So I was really interested in looking deeper inside the organization and how it developed in the last years, and also how the development will continue. This increase in economical power by the BRICS states and the expansion of its membership led me to the question what this means for the global economic order dominated by the G7 states. So let's first talk about what the short-term BRICS means. It stands for a group of nations that were the early members of the organization. These were Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. This is where the name comes from. The organization brings together major continents with emerging markets from diverse continents, like South America, Africa, Asia, and Europe. Today, the member states represent over 40% of the world's population. We now talk about the development of BRICS. BRICS Summit was preceded by foreign ministers' meetings that began in 2006 on the margins of the United Nations General Assembly, alongside consultations among the future BRIC finance ministers and general bank governors. These early gatherings reflected a shared goal to reform the institutions regulating the world's financial order. The BRIC group, Brazil, Russia, India, and China, held its first leaders' summit in Russia in 2009, bringing together major emerging markets from different continents. The leaders committed to building a more democratic and transparent economic architecture, to supporting the G20's efforts to reform international financial institutions and restore global growth. South Africa's accession in 2010 transformed BRIC into BRICS, marking the transition from a simple policy and communication platform to a genuine transregional governance mechanism with a comprehensive political, security, economic, and social agenda. Curtin and Lainova describe BRICS development in three cycles. The first, formative cycle, from 2008 to 2013, focused on defining priorities, building institutions, setting an agenda, and forging a shared identity. During this period, BRICS launched outreach dialogues, rapidly developed an institutional framework, and after 2011, began holding informal consultations among leaders before G20 summits. The second cycle, from 2013 to 2018, saw BRICS maintain unity despite internal tensions, domestic and external challenges, and leadership changes. The group consolidated its outreach efforts, broadened cooperation, and strengthened cooperation for multilateralism and an equitable international order. The third cycle, from 2019 to the present, tested BRICS with internal divisions, COVID-19, and the pandemic-induced crisis. BRICS expanded health cooperation and advanced work on the digital economy, science, innovation, and adopted the BRICS Economic Partnership Strategy from 2021 to 2025 and a counter-terrorism action plan. A notable achievement was the new development bank, which quickly committed $10 billion to crisis-related assistance, healthcare, social safety nets, and economic recovery. Overall, BRICS has evolved into a resilient and adaptive platform that combines flexibility, innovation, and continuity while steadily promoting reform of the global governance architecture. Now we are looking on the BRICS expansion of 2023. On this map, we see the founding members of BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and also South Africa. But we also see the new members that joined the BRICS bloc in the beginning of 2024. These are Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iran, UAE, and Ethiopia. The expansion brought the BRICS group more economic opportunities and natural resources. There are also countries marked in yellow that applied for membership but haven't got one yet. These are, for example, Algeria, Bolivia, and the Philippines. Let's take a closer look at the economic performance of the BRICS countries and how they are strengthening their financial cooperation on the global stage. The BRICS nations now make up 40% of the global economy and achieved 4% combining GDP growth in 2024, outperforming the world average of 3.3%. The global economy is still influenced by the competition and Western dominance. Many developing and emerging countries rely heavily on US dollar-based funding, which can make them financially vulnerable. When borrowing in dollars becomes expensive, it puts pressure on the local economies, and countries with large US debts may struggle to borrow more because they have few other financing options. To counter this imbalance, BRICS created a new development bank, NDB, a key institution aimed to strengthening economic ties and offering an alternative to Western-led financial systems. The NDB funds infrastructure and sustainable development projects aligned with the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals and reduces currency risk by financing in local currencies. Foreign direct investment (FDI) has surged. Inflows rose from $84 billion in 2001 to $355 billion in 2021, doubling their global share to 22%. Outflows also grew, reaching 20% of global flows by 2020, with the US remaining the top investor in the BRICS countries. Inter-BRICS investment expanded steadily, with inward FDI stock growing from 27 billion in 2010 to 167 billion in 2020, driven mainly by China as the largest investor and recipient. Now that we've looked at the economic performance and investment dynamics of the BRICS countries, let's compare them with the Group of Seven and see how these two groups interact on the global stage. In 2020, the combined GDP of the BRICS countries, measured in purchasing power parity, overtook that one of the G7, which includes Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States, highlighting the growing economic influence of these emerging markets. BRICS countries are also rich in mineral resources such as oil and lithium, which strengthens their strategic importance globally. In response, G7 countries have increased their infrastructure investments, particularly in regions affected by China's Belt and Road Initiative, as a way to maintain influence and access to key markets. However, BRICS still relies heavily on financial strength and concessions of the G7, for example, debt restructuring, climate finance, and access to agricultural markets, showing that, despite of their economic growth, they remain dependent on the established global financial system. At the same time, G7 countries are seeking bilateral trade agreements with the BRICS members to secure economic ties and maintain leverage in global trade. After comparing BRICS and the G7, let's take a moment to summarize all of our findings. Over the past 20 years, BRICS has grown economically and expanded its membership, increasing the international influence of its members. The group has become an important platform for trade, investment, and resources. At the same time, BRICS still relies on the financial strength and concessions of the G7, such as debt restructuring, climate finance, and access to agricultural markets. This shows that, despite their growing power, the members remain connected to the established global system. Overall, our findings show that the BRICS is helping to shape a more multipolar world. That future remains exciting and uncertain, and it will be interesting to see how these relations with the G7 and the global economic dynamics continue to evolve. These are the references I used for this presentation. Thank you all for listening and for your attention. I hope this gave you a clear overview of BRICS, its growing economic influence, and the role it may play in shaping a more multipolar world.